It's over! It's finally over! I am so happy that it's over. I am so happy that it's over. I don't have to do any of these videos anymore. No more frustration, no more negativity, no more wasting my critical talents on a fanfiction. Making myself looking ever so bad by doing so. I am done with this. It is over. I am so happy. Congratulations are in order. Congratulations to Somber to finally pulling through all the frustration and suffering that this story caused him. Congratulations to everyone who had the gall to read it from start to finish. Congratulations to the editors, to anyone who ever worked on this. Congratulations, yes, even a little bit to myself, for enduring all this. Congratulations to my colleagues of the FOE podcast, NY and company. I applaud you all. Applauses. It's over. Good work. Good job. Does that mean I'm going to cut this story some slack? No! Absolutely no! Especially since there is so much of it that pisses me off like nothing ever before. I am so enraged right now, even if I don't look like it. I am on the verge of tears. So much I am enraged. I mean, I was mad when the author decided to bring Glory back alive. I was completely dejected and depressed when she was brought back to life only to die again. I was mad for the whole bastard debacle. Not to mention all the little things and the big things that didn't make any sense in the story, and Blackchair becoming a one-note, mopey, bipolar mess of a character. All of these things, they pale in comparison to my outrage for what went down in the final chapter of the story. In the first half of it, at least. And the reason why I'm so mad is because, well, it's the final chapter. And things that shouldn't happen in a final chapter end up happening. So, the final chapter, right. It's the final battle against the Eater of Souls and what have you, and the world is at stake. They had to go down the mines and all that, and facing all the obstacles that need to be overcome in order to get to the happy ending, or whatever ending Somber is going for. Alright, so, what is the team you choose to save the world with? What is the team you selected for the climactic battle? Well, let's see, other than Blackjack, obviously, let's see, there is Dusk, Glory's sister, an appropriate choice. There is Lancer, yes, definitely, good choice, Lancer. We need a sharpshooter for this. They're always useful, some way or the other. Let's see, there is Pythia, the Star Category Zebra filly, which, well, to be fair, she was more of a stowaway. You must be this tall to save the world. That's Blackjack's best line in this entire chapter, I have to admit. It made me chuckle. But she can predict the future, so that's always useful. There is Sweetie Butt. Interesting choice. Okay, sure, why not? Let's see, who else is there? Oh, Crumpet! Crumpet's good choice, Crumpet, yes, I like Crumpet. And then... oh yeah! And finally, Eris. Who the hell is Eris? Okay. I cannot be the only one who asked this question. I cannot be the only one who doesn't remember Eris. If indeed she was ever introduced before. Am I the only one? Was she ever important? Did she ever amount to anything as a character in this entire story? she doesn't feel like it. Am I the only one who doesn't remember her? Help me out on here, because if I'm wrong, I want to know, but who is Eris? What did she do? What is she here for? Why was she included? Such an obvious minor character. Why was such an obvious minor character included in the team that's supposed to save the world? And you know what? It actually does not matter whether I remember her or not. It doesn't matter whether she was introduced before this point or not. It doesn't matter in the slightest. You know why? I'll tell you why. In fact, I'll do one better. I'm going to read to you the passage that Blackjack uses, Somber uses, I should say, to describe this character, to briefly describe this character in the eyes of Blackjack. So, and I quote, this quote is about Eris. I really wished I had more time to get to know her. I just wanted a flamer with me. I had no clue about the pony using it. Translation: she's an expendable nobody. By virtue of this description of her, she is nobody important to either the story or Blackjack herself. And let's face it, the story is Blackjack, so she's nobody important. Somber just employed a red shirt in the climax of his epic saga. Excuse me for a moment. Let me explain to you why this was a terrible decision. And not just a petty complaint on mine. This is downright a story-breaking problem that Somber should seriously reconsider editing later on, because I know he's going to re-edit major points of the story. I should suggest to remove Eris entirely, and I'm going to explain why. In case you don't know what a red shirt is, in the original Star Trek series, I'm going to assume everybody knows what a red shirt is, but anyway, bear with me. In the original Star Trek series, there will be these episodes in which some random character, some random one-note character will be introduced for just the sake of the one episode, incidentally wearing a red shirt, which in Star Trek lore symbolized a lowered ranked individual compared to the officials in the main cast, which are the characters incidentally you're supposed to care for. In these episodes, the red shirt guy or girl would die. They would die. They would die a meaningless death. Now, the reason why they would introduce a character wearing a red shirt for the sole purpose of dying, because that's what they were all for, it was such a blatant narrative device over the years, it served usually two purposes. One was to prompt the main characters, which again, the characters you're supposed to care for, into action and instill some sort of character development. But the second and most important reason why red shirts were employed is because it was a way of the writers of the show to remind the audience that the threat of death is ever present, that indeed the main characters you care about could actually die at any moment if they're not careful. And they reminded you of the threat of death by killing off someone who was completely meaningless. That way, you don't have to suffer through the loss of a character you actually cared about. In other words, a red shirt's purpose is to literally take the fall in the place of a main character. And it's by far one of the most popular, unfortunately, infamous and lazy narrative devices ever to be employed in fiction ever since its concoction in the original Star Trek series. That's pretty bad. I mean, they are characters you have no attachment to, whose death does not mean anything, but you're supposed to buy that their death actually means something for the main characters, even though these characters that were just meant to die were never before introduced. So really, it's all kinds of wrong, all kinds of offensive and insulting for the audience to be subjected to the use of a red shirt, regardless of the setting. And Somber employed an obvious, so obvious, red shirt in the final battle of his 1,000,000.6 words long story, if I have to trust the final notes. A saga this long, building itself for a final epic confrontation that would save the world or destroy it, and it has a red shirt in the team that's supposed to take on the menace. Let me explain why that is an awful decision. Imagine, okay, here's an example. The end of Final Fantasy VII is an easy example to follow. You're just about to fight Sephiroth. You have all of these characters that you spent 60+ hours of gameplay learning to know them, becoming emotionally attached to them, getting to know them, their strengths, their weaknesses, characters that you care about, whose actual death, if they indeed get to die, they don't, but regardless, whose actual death will mean something to you because you care about them, because you know them. And imagine this possible scenario in which the team that goes to face Sephiroth in the final battle is comprised of Cloud, Tifa, and a guy named Steve. And then you ask Cloud, who the hell is this guy named Steve? And Cloud says, oh, you know, he's just a guy that I know somewhere. I don't care who this guy is. I mean, I needed a flamer, and this guy knows how to use a flamethrower, so I picked him up for the final battle. Isn't that riveting storytelling? Eris, in the context of the story, she's Steve. She's a Steve. She's a completely meaningless character whose eventual death won't mean anything to us, and that pretty much destroys the credibility of your epic climactic battle. Because you cannot take anything that's going on here seriously anymore, because you're fighting the final bad guy with a guy named Steve. Am I getting through you? Do you see what the problem is? I mean, if it were to be just any other random battle in the middle of the story that actually didn't mean much in the grand scheme of things, then okay, sure, I will be okay to use a Steve, to use a red shirt, to use some pony named Eris. I will be okay with that. But this is the climactic battle. This is the team that's supposed to save the world. You don't bring some guy named Steve that you don't even know of, that you don't have any emotional connections with, whose death doesn't mean anything at all, to the final battle of your epic saga. What were you thinking? Oh, well, you know, Somber needed a flamer, so doesn't matter who that one is. Here we go. She's a good flamer. She's perfect. Pragmatism, everybody. It doesn't matter if it completely overwhelms and overpowers whatever bit of emotional connection you had for this story. We had to be pragmatic. I guess it makes sense from a character standpoint, but from a reader's standpoint, this is just such a baffling decision. And you know, it's not like Somber couldn't choose somebody, someone else, to take on that particular role. I mean, okay, so Eris. What do we know about Eris? She's good with a flamethrower, apparently. Then why didn't you bring Candlewick instead of Eris? I mean, the guy is good with a flamethrower. He's part of a flamethrower-themed gang. Oh, and also, one small little detail. He's an established character that people might actually care for. Why didn't you bring Candlewick? I am mesmerized and baffled by this decision. I mean, it's not like you had plans for Candlewick to survive and do something important after that. Clearly you didn't. So there is no excuse not to bring Candlewick, an established character who's good with a flamethrower, that you actually wanted us to care for because you bothered to tell us his part of the story through the various perceptron moments that Blackjack experienced. I remember, Somber. I remember. So, what I'm saying is, when you're going to eventually edit this story, consider banishing Eris to the oblivion hence she came from. And have a character that I might actually be invested in. And it's not like there was any reason to bring a red shirt to this battle in any way. I mean, Somber has never been shy about killing major main characters, mostly for completely gratuitous reasons, but that's an argument for another video altogether. A video that I already made. But again, so the whole point of a red shirt existing is to take the fall in the place of a main character. And it doesn't really make sense here because you end up killing two other much more major characters before killing Eris. Because yes, spoiler alert, Eris dies. Big shocker. So really, well, actually technically you only killed one character before her because Sweetie Bot turned out to be alive later on, I think, in the epilogue. That was a confusing scene, but regardless, that's not the point. At the time, it seemed like you killed two characters before killing Eris, which again was a red shirt. And she wasn't doing even a great job as a red shirt because, well, she let two main characters die instead of her. Anyway, this is my red shirt complaint. Eris should not be here. If you really want to have a flamer, have somebody that readers might actually care about. I just started talking about this chapter, and already I am backwards insane. Okay. That was one thing. Fix this eventually, Somber. Alright, so next sequence. Delegate. Ah!